I'm Lena. I gave birth alone in a freezing Minneapolis hospital room while my father chose my younger sister's comfort over my survival. The day I brought my daughter into the world was also the day my family made it clear we weren't welcome. But one call changed everything. Where are you watching this video from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. The lights buzzed above me like a broken promise, too bright, too sterile. My legs still trembled from the delivery. My back stuck to the paper-thin hospital gown. And all I needed was to go home. But I didn't have one anymore. "Dad, please," I whispered, voice cracking from hours of screaming and crying. "It's just a few days. Until I can walk properly." "Until I can," I gestured helplessly at the sleeping bundle in my arms. "My daughter. My Kayla." He didn't even glance at her. Gary, my father, though that title felt ridiculous in that moment, stood rigid near the doorway, his coat zipped to his chin, as if he was already halfway gone. "You know Marissa needs the space," he said flatly, as if this was a rental dispute, not his first grandchild's entrance into the world. "The boys are a handful. Marissa. My younger sister. The golden child. The one who never heard no from him. The one who got the bedroom with the walk-in closet while I was shoved into the converted attic. The one who had 2 sons by 2 different men, neither of whom had stuck around, but somehow, she was still the one who got space." "I just had a C-section," I said quietly. "I can't even climb stairs without." He cut me off. "You'll manage. You always do." It was meant to be a compliment, maybe. A nod to my grit, my self-sufficiency. But it felt like a knife. "I'm not asking to stay forever," I said, swallowing a sob. "Just until I heal. Just until I can hold her without shaking." Gary finally looked at Kayla, squinting like he was assessing a stranger's child. Then, just as quickly, he looked away. "I'm sorry," he said, but his tone was anything but. "You made your choices, Lena. Now you live with them." "My choices?" Like keeping the baby after he told me I should fix the problem quietly? Like not chasing down Kayla's father when he left at 6 months pregnant, saying he wasn't cut out for family life? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because what could I say to a man who could walk out on his daughter at the lowest point of her life and sleep soundly that night? He stepped closer, not to me, but to the door, and placed a bottle of orange juice on the bedside table. The same brand he used to pack in my lunchbox when I was little. "Don't forget to drink. You'll need energy." And then he left. Just like that. The door clicked shut. The echo of it was louder than the birth monitor's beeps or the infant wails down the hall. I sat in that cold hospital room, my body stitched and broken, my heart even more so, and stared at the juice. Kayla stirred on my chest, her tiny hand curling around the edge of my gown. That touch, so fragile and pure, was the only warmth in the entire room. Tears slid down my cheeks without permission. I didn't sob, I couldn't. I didn't have the energy for sound. Just silent rivers of heartbreak, carving lines down a face that had already aged 5 years in 5 hours. So this was it. No nursery wallpaper. No home-cooked recovery meals. No balloons or welcome signs or family cuddles. Just me and Kayla, under flickering lights, with no place to go. Back home, if you could call it that, the walls were thin and the heater clanked like a cough that never cleared. The 1-bedroom apartment above the old laundromat smelled like soap and despair. I'd cleared a corner of the living room for Kayla's bassinet, her diapers stacked next to the space heater I never trusted. 2 weeks. That's how long it took me to return to work. I told myself I was being strong, but the truth? I was broke. My maternity leave was unpaid, because of course it was, and Gary wasn't answering my calls. Marissa sent me a photo of her boys building snowmen in the backyard and wrote, "Wish you were here." As if I hadn't begged for just one night on her couch. At the call center, the fluorescent lights buzzed above like the hospital ones. I sat with a pillow wedged behind my back and a heating pad looped around my waist. The painkillers had run out. I couldn't afford more. I kept the photo of Kayla in her pink knit hat pinned to my cubicle wall like a lifeline. "Hey," Donna said gently from the next desk. She was older, kinder than the rest. "You sure you're okay to be here?" "I have to be," I said. And I smiled. That practiced smile, The kind that says, "Don't worry about me, I'm fine," even when your body feels like a dropped face held together with duct tape. I clocked in at 8 a.m., pumped breast milk in the janitor's closet on my 15-minute breaks, then rushed home by 6. Most nights, Kayla would be crying before I even unlocked the door. Her cheeks blotchy from hours of waiting for comfort only I could give. I'd cradle her in one arm and stir boxed mac and cheese with the other, hoping I wouldn't fall asleep standing up. Sometimes I wondered what it would have felt like to be mothered the way I was trying to mother her. The nights were the hardest. The quiet got too loud. Sometimes I'd sit beside her bassinet and whisper promises. "We'll get out of here someday. I'll find a better job. You'll never feel this alone. I swear it." There was a photo on my nightstand of me as a baby, Gary holding me, beaming, before Marissa was born. I used to stare at it when I was little, imagining I was still that baby in his arms. Now, I couldn't even remember the last time he said he loved me. But every morning, I woke up, changed her diaper, brushed my hair, called in another day at the call center. And every night, when I kissed Kayla's forehead, I made the same vow: you will never feel unwanted. Not while I'm breathing. Kayla was 6 when it happened. Christmas Eve at my parents' house. The first time we'd been invited since her birth, and even then, I knew it was more about optics than warmth. Marissa had posted something on Facebook about keeping family close during the holidays, and suddenly Gary called with a strained, "You two should come by." I told myself I was going for Kayla, to give her a memory, a sliver of what family could look like, even if it never looked that way for me. The house smelled like cinnamon and butter and years of built-up resentment. Garland wrapped around every banister, twinkling lights flashing too fast, like they were trying to distract from everything real. Marissa's boys, Jackson and Eli, were tearing through gift wrap at lightning speed. Their shouts filled the room like a storm. Laughter, squeals, flying ribbons. They each got tablets. One in red, one in blue. Matching gaming headsets. Action figures from the latest superhero movie. Custom-made hoodies with their names embroidered. Gary was right in the middle of it, laughing so hard his glasses fogged. He was kneeling on the carpet with them, helping put batteries into a remote control truck, his hand resting on Eli's shoulder with a tenderness I didn't remember ever feeling from him. Kayla sat beside me quietly on the couch, legs swinging above the floor. Her curls were pulled back into a neat ponytail. She wore the sparkly lavender dress she'd picked out herself after saving up 2 months' worth of allowance. It was her special dress, the one she asked to wear when she really wanted to be noticed. She held the last remaining gift in her lap. It was wrapped in reused Santa paper, edges taped like someone had rushed through it. My mother handed it to her with a distracted "Here, honey," before turning back to refill wine glasses. Kayla opened it carefully. She always did. There, beneath the crinkled paper, was an old children's book, The Wind on the Willow Path, and a faded postcard of a coastal lighthouse. The book's cover was soft with age, the corners bent and scribbled with a childish scrawl I recognized as my own. "That used to be yours," Gary said, still seated with the boys. Figured she might like it. I stared. The same book I'd read when I was Kayla's age. A relic from a time I thought maybe he'd once loved me like this. "Thanks," Kayla said softly. Because she was kind. Because she was polite. Because even when she noticed the unfairness, she didn't make people uncomfortable about it. Her small hands folded around the postcard, which said, "Merry Christmas, 1987" on the back in my mom's loopy handwriting. And I smiled at her, because what else was I going to do? Donna was with us. I'd invited her under the excuse of she had nowhere else to go, but really, I'd needed anyone, to witness it. She stood at the edge of the living room, sipping cider, her face unreadable but her eyes never leaving mine. The boys ripped through more boxes while Kayla thumbed through the old book. No one asked her what she got. No one clapped or fussed or handed her fresh batteries. No one noticed when she slowly tucked the book back into its paper wrapping and set it gently on the couch cushion beside her. Later, when we got in the car, I buckled her in with frozen fingers. She was quiet, staring straight ahead. "Mom?" she asked. Her voice was soft. hesitant. Yeah, baby. Did I do something wrong? My breath caught. No, honey. Not at all. She looked down at her hands. Then why didn't Grandpa hug me? I couldn't answer her. I couldn't tell her that some people confuse blood with loyalty, and others hand out love like coupons, plentiful for some, expired for others. So I just whispered, "You were perfect. I saw everything. And I'm so proud of you." She didn't respond. But that was the thing about kids, they don't always need to reply. They just feel everything. Absorb it. Bury it. Back at home, after she fell asleep clutching that old book, I sat on the couch and stared at the empty Christmas card we were supposed to bring for the family gift exchange. I picked up a pen and wrote one sentence on it before throwing it away. Never again. Because they didn't just give her an old book that day. They gave her a front row seat to the difference between being tolerated and being cherished. And that was the night I stopped pretending they couldn't see what they were doing. They could see. They just didn't care. But I did. And I always would. It started with a sigh. I was in the break room at work, stirring instant oatmeal with a plastic spoon, when Donna walked in and plopped down across from me with her usual dramatic flair. "All right, spill," she said, folding her arms. "Something happened over the holidays and you're walking around like a balloon someone forgot to tie." I froze, spoon midair. And before I could catch myself, it all came tumbling out. The dusty book. The forgotten hug. The silence wrapped in tinsel. And Kayla, my sweet, sensitive girl, trying to understand why her cousins got applause and she got nostalgia. Donna didn't interrupt. She just listened, her expression softening with every word. When I finally stopped talking, she nodded slowly and said, "Then we're throwing her a Real party." I blinked. "What?" "She's 6. You know what that means," she grinned. "Cupcakes. Balloons. And a clown. Because if the people who should have shown up for her won't, we damn well will." I laughed. I hadn't meant to, but it bubbled out, startled and raw. "You're serious?" "I've already got a guy. He juggles and sings in a voice that sounds like helium met Elvis. Kayla's going to love it." The following Friday, I picked Kayla up early from school, telling her we had a surprise at Mommy's work. She looked worried. Kids don't trust surprises after too many disappointments, but she held my hand anyway. When the elevator doors opened to the call center's main floor, she hesitated. And then, surprise! Confetti flew. A cupcake tower sparkled on the conference table. Balloons floated everywhere, purple and silver, her favorite colors. Donna stood proudly beside a man in rainbow suspenders and a red nose, who began honking out the Happy Birthday song on a kazoo. Kayla blinked at the crowd of my coworkers, stunned into silence. Then she turned to me, eyes wide. "Is this all for me?" I nodded, throat tight. "Yes, baby. Every bit of it." She didn't move at first. Just looked around at the people clapping, the silly clown making balloon animals, the giant birthday card already signed with doodles and messages like "You're the sunshine in your mom's sky." Then she smiled. Not the shy smile I'd gotten used to. Not the polite, unsure one she wore at family gatherings. But a real one. Big. Bright. Brave. She ran toward the cupcakes like it was the best day of her life. And maybe it was. For 2 hours, she danced to music piped through old speakers, sang with Donna's helium-voiced clown, and hugged every person who handed her a crayon drawing or sticker or dollar store tiara. She even stood on a chair at one point and announced, "This is the best surprise ever." I watched from the doorway, arms crossed tight over my chest. Donna slid beside me, bumping my shoulder. "See?" she whispered. "Told you." "I don't know how to thank you," I murmured, eyes stinging. "You don't have to." That little girl made half this office cry happy tears. We should be thanking her. After the party, as we walked back to the car with a balloon tied to her wrist and frosting still on her cheek, Kayla reached for my hand. "Mom?" "Yeah, sweetie." She looked up at me, thoughtful. "Is Miss Donna part of our family?" I smiled down at her. "She is now. Time is a thief when you're a single mom." I blinked, and Kayla was suddenly 7, quieter now, more watchful. Her sparkle hadn't vanished, not completely, but it dimmed in slow flickers, like a bulb that only worked when someone jiggled the cord just right. Work had gotten harder. Not in the way of tasks, I was good at what I did. My manager even said I had natural leadership instincts. But leadership didn't mean anything when your shift ended after sundown and your kid was being tucked in by people who didn't see her. I'd pick her up from my parents' house every evening after work, and each time she'd greet me with a smaller version of herself. Less talk. Less light. "Did you eat?" I'd ask. She'd nod, eyes on the floor. "What did you do today?" "Nothing much." It became our ritual, these non-conversations on the drive home. She'd stare out the window, clutching her backpack like armor. I'd steal glances at her from the red lights, my chest tightening with every passing silence. One night, she fell asleep in the back seat before we got home. Her fingers still gripped the fraying strap of that unicorn backpack I'd mended 3 times. I parked and just watched her. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. The same way you feel a storm before the clouds appear. But she wasn't ready to tell me. Not yet. So I waited. One Saturday, while organizing laundry, I noticed her clothes from the week smelled like mildew and stale dog food. Her favorite pink hoodie had a muddy footprint across the front. Her lunchbox was untouched again. I asked my mother if Kayla was doing okay when I dropped her off. "She's a quiet child," Mom said dismissively. "Always so sensitive." "Has something happened?" I pressed. "She's been acting withdrawn." "Oh, she's fine," she waved me off. "Kids are moody. Besides, she's lucky to spend time with her cousins. They're boys, they play rough. She'll toughen up." Toughen up? That night, Kayla flinched when I reached to pull a tag off her sweater. It was small, barely noticeable. But I noticed. "Did someone hurt you?" I asked gently. "No," she whispered. But her eyes said yes. I didn't push. Not yet. I started watching more closely. Not just her, but them. The way my dad dismissed her when she tried to tell him about a school project. The way Marissa rolled her eyes when Kayla asked for seconds at dinner. The way Jackson barked orders at her like she was a maid, and Eli laughed when she dropped a glass. And the way no one corrected them. One Thursday evening, I arrived 10 minutes early. What I saw when I walked in stopped me cold. Kayla was on her knees in the kitchen, scrubbing the floor with a rag. Her hands were red, raw. Around her, muddy shoes, a knocked-over mop bucket, broken crayons, and toy debris scattered like a war zone. Jackson and Eli were on the couch in the next room, playing video games. Loud, obnoxious laughter echoed from the screen. I took a step forward. "Kayla?" She looked up. Her face. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just looked, caught. Like she'd done something wrong. Like she was ashamed. "Why are you cleaning?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't answer. Just knelt there, staring at the floor, the rag limp in her hands. "Kayla, baby, talk to me. Who told you to do this?" She shook her head. But her body, tense, frozen, frightened, spoke volumes. Behind me, I heard Marissa's laugh. Casual. Careless. And suddenly, I knew. I knew what had been happening when I wasn't there. The slow erosion. The invisible chiseling away of my daughter's sense of worth. Because to them, she wasn't family. She was just my kid. The one who didn't belong. The one who could be used. And I'd let it happen. Because I thought I needed their help. Because I thought I didn't have a choice. I crouched beside Kayla, ignoring the dirty floor, and gently took the rag from her hands. "You don't have to do this," I whispered. "Not anymore." She didn't look at me. But she didn't resist when I pulled her into my arms. That night, after I tucked her into bed and kissed her forehead, I sat at the kitchen table with my fists clenched and my jaw aching from holding back everything I wanted to scream. Something had to change. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. There are moments in life that split you in two. Before that night, I was the Lena who endured, who absorbed every insult with silence, every slight with a shrug, because what else was I supposed to do? But after I saw Kayla on her knees, scrubbing filth she didn't create, something inside me cracked in half, and through that crack, clarity flooded in like ice water. And it burned. The next morning, I stood in the break room at work, staring blankly at the vending machine. I hadn't slept. My stomach churned with grief and fury, But beneath that, a plan was forming. I was done begging. Done apologizing. I poured myself a stale cup of coffee and made my way upstairs to the new wing corporate offices, glass walls, shiny floors. It felt like another world. A world I wasn't supposed to belong in. But I'd recently been promoted. Small win. Big shift. My title was now account liaison, which mostly meant I got to attend client meetings and fetch lattes for the men in expensive suits who'd never learned to make their own calendar invites. And that's where I met Damien. He wasn't like the others. While most of the executives glanced over me like I was a moving coat rack, Damien looked me in the eye. Asked questions. Remembered my daughter's name. Even joked that I was the only one in this office who actually gets things done. I didn't know what to make of him at first. Men like him always had a catch. But he didn't flirt. Not at first. He invited me to mentorship lunches, where he talked about venture capital like it was a sport. I asked questions, and he actually listened. Not in the fake way men pretend to while scrolling their phones, but in that still, focused way that made me feel respected. He told me his wife had died 3 years ago. That he was raising a daughter, 15, named Zoe. That he understood what it meant to be both parent and protector. Over time, those lunches changed. He'd lean in closer. Compliment my ideas. Slip a joke into a compliment and a compliment into a look that lingered. But he never crossed a line. Not until I did. It was after another horrible evening at my parents'. I'd gone to pick up Kayla, and she was sitting on the porch in the cold. Alone. Shivering. No jacket. Jackson had accidentally locked her out, and no one had noticed for an hour. Marissa waved it off. She didn't say anything, she said, rolling her eyes. Kids exaggerate. Gary muttered something about raising her to be tougher. And something in me screamed. But I swallowed it. For Kayla. I drove us home, tucked her into bed, and paced the kitchen until my legs ached. Then I picked up my phone and called Damien. I didn't even know what I wanted from him. I just needed someone. Hey, I said, my voice trembling before I could steal it. Can you talk? 10 minutes later, a sleek black Porsche pulled up in front of my building. He stepped out like something out of a movie, dark coat, scarf, steady eyes. But when he saw me, red-faced and shaking on the stoop, his expression changed. He didn't ask questions right away. He just opened the passenger door and said, "Get in." I slid inside. The car was warm. Soothing. We drove in silence for a few minutes before I broke. I told him everything. The hospital. The years of neglect. The party Donna threw. The bruises you can't see. And Kayla, my bright, brave girl, slowly folding into herself. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. You never deserved that, he said quietly. Neither did your daughter. We ended up at a little cafe he knew. Warm lighting, quiet music, a place where no one would recognize me. He ordered cocoa for us and a slice of pie for Kayla, who he insisted we wake gently and bring inside. And then, halfway through the cocoa, he texted someone. 15 minutes later, a girl about Zoe's age walked in, jeans, hoodie, earbuds in. She saw Damien, rolled her eyes affectionately, and plopped down beside him. This is my daughter, he said. Zoe, meet Lena and Kayla. Zoe gave a small wave. Kayla, still waking up, blinked in awe at this cool teenager with lavender-dyed hair and painted nails. They sat there, side by side, nibbling on pie. Damien looked at me and said, "You don't have to go back there. Ever." And for the first time in years, I believed it might be true. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because I looked different, but because for the first time in years, I felt different. Lighter. Sharper. Like someone had finally wiped the fog from the glass. That night with Damien and Zoe wasn't just cocoa and comfort. It was a glimpse into a life where we weren't just surviving. Where Kayla could laugh without fear of being shushed. Where I didn't have to pretend things were fine just to avoid rocking the boat. And that's when I knew. I couldn't leave Kayla with them ever again. There wouldn't be another weekend at Grandma's. No more dinners at Gary's. No more sleepovers at Marissa's where accidents happened and no one took responsibility. We were done. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just stopped showing up. And sure enough, it didn't take long. 2 days later, my phone lit up with Dad's cell, then Mom's cell, then Marissa, which I had kept as a joke that no longer felt funny. I didn't answer. Not when the messages turned from concern to sarcasm. Not when Marissa wrote, "Are you mad because she had to do chores? What are you raising, a princess?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive back there and stand on the front porch and yell, "She's a child, not your unpaid maid." But I didn't. Because I was saving my voice for the moment that would count. And it came sooner than I expected. That Saturday, I pulled into their driveway like I had 100 times before, but this time, not to drop Kayla off. This time, I walked up the steps with purpose. Marissa opened the door, confused. She had a coffee mug in one hand and a makeup brush in the other. "What are you?" I brushed past her. "Where's Kayla's stuff?" She followed me inside. Whoa, what's going on? Is something wrong? Gary sat in his recliner, watching sports highlights. He barely looked up. I kept walking. Into the hallway. Into the cluttered guest room Kayla had been sleeping in. I opened the drawers and started pulling her things, what little they'd let her keep there, into a bag. "You could at least talk to us before acting like this," Marissa snapped, voice rising. I turned slowly, calmly. "I did talk," I said. Over and over. None of you listened. Gary finally spoke. "Don't overreact, Lena. It's just the way things are. She's a girl. She better get used to cleaning up after people." And that was it. The moment. Like a switch flipped inside me. The world slowed. My ears rang. I stared at him. At the man who once carried me on his shoulders during parades. Who used to call me Button when I was little. Who didn't even flinch as he said my daughter's place was on her knees with a sponge. "She's a girl," I repeated, voice trembling with rage. "And you think that means she deserves less?" Marissa scoffed. "Oh please, she's dramatic, just like you." I turned back to packing. "You think this is dramatic? Just wait." I zipped the bag, stood up tall, and walked out. They didn't follow. Maybe they thought I was bluffing. Maybe they'd gotten so used to me swallowing everything that they didn't believe I had it in me to leave. But 5 minutes later, a sleek black Porsche pulled into the driveway. Damien stepped out in dark jeans and a charcoal coat, looking every bit like a man who did not come to play. Gary stood now, watching from the porch, eyes narrowing. Damien opened the passenger door for me. I didn't look back as I walked to the car, Kayla's hand in mine. I heard Marissa say something under her breath. I heard Gary mutter, "Unbelievable." But I didn't flinch. Because I was done collecting scraps. And as the car pulled away, Kayla looked up at me and whispered, "Are we going home?" I kissed the top of her head and said, "Not yet. But we're getting there." We didn't go back to my apartment that night. Instead, Damien drove us to a quiet side street lined with trees that still held the last gold of autumn. The kind of street I used to slow down on, just to pretend I lived there. He pulled into an underground garage and parked beside a sleek silver SUV. I unbuckled Kayla, still half asleep in her booster seat, and followed him to an elevator that opened with a soft chime. The penthouse was light. That's what struck me first. Not the size. Not the views. But the feeling. Big windows let in a wash of amber light from the city below. Bookshelves lined the walls. A guitar leaned in the corner beside a tall plant I was sure had a name. The kitchen glowed like a magazine spread. Warm wood. Marble counters. A kettle steaming on the stove. Zoe looked up from the couch, earbuds hanging around her neck. She smiled when she saw Kayla. "You can borrow my coloring pens," she offered. "They're the good ones." Kayla's eyes lit up. "Go ahead," I whispered. "Just for a little while." As she patted across the soft rug toward Zoe, Damien turned to me. "You can stay here," he said gently. "For as long as you need." I didn't answer right away. Because in my world, safety always came with strings. A place to rest always cost something. "I'm not looking for charity," I said finally. "I know," he replied. "That's not what this is. You've been fighting a battle by yourself for years. You need time to breathe. That's all." I nodded, biting the inside of my cheek to keep from crying. He showed me the guest room. Queen bed. Clean linens. A diffuser humming lavender into the air. A note on the nightstand that read, "You're safe here." That night, I tucked Kayla into a bed that didn't squeak every time she turned over. She fell asleep under a real comforter instead of a stack of donated blankets. I stood in the doorway for a long time, watching her chest rise and fall. She looked light again, just like the apartment. The next morning, Damien made us cinnamon rolls and coffee. Zoe walked Kayla through her morning routine like she'd done it 100 times. I caught myself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in weeks. Later that afternoon, while Kayla and Zoe were drawing together, Damien handed me a small folder. Inside were blank pages, labeled, Budget Apartment Search Legal Notes Job Strategy. I wasn't sure where you were at, he said softly. But I figured if you're ready to start building, I'd help lay the foundation. I stared at the folder. It wasn't a rescue. It was a plan. A future. I've never had this kind of support, I whispered. He smiled. You've earned it. You just never had someone to back you up. That night, Kayla sat on the balcony beside me with a mug of warm milk. She looked up at the stars and asked, Do you think we'll stay here forever? I smiled. Not forever. But long enough to remember what safe feels like. And maybe, just maybe, long enough to rebuild everything we were told we'd never deserve. You can tell a lot about people by how they react to your happiness. The moment I stopped shrinking, they noticed. It started with a text from Marissa. So you're too good for us now? Followed by one from my mother. It's not healthy to isolate Kayla from her family. But the one that finally made me laugh, an actual, out-loud laugh, came from my father. We've all made mistakes. It's time to move forward. Be the bigger person. As if forgiveness was a duty I owed them. As if a decade of silence, neglect, and belittling my daughter could be brushed away like dust on a mantle. I didn't respond. Not yet. I was too busy living. Kayla was smiling again. Talking more. She started humming while brushing her teeth, giggling when Zoe painted her nails, writing notes for me on sticky paper that said things like, I love you, Mommy, so much, with hearts that filled the entire page. And I was working with Damien on real goals. We sat down once a week at the kitchen table with the folder he'd given me, mapping things out like co-architects of a future that finally included me as more than a survivor. Then, on a cloudy Wednesday afternoon, I got the call. It was Marissa. I don't know why I answered. Maybe curiosity. Maybe some small part of me still holding the thread of hope that she'd say something real. Her voice was tight. Not angry. Not cold. Panicked. Lena, I need help. I said nothing. Her breath caught. I'm behind on the mortgage. A few other things too. The boys are growing. It's been hard. Still, I waited. I know you've been doing better, she added quickly. I saw the pictures. Kayla looks happy. There it was. The real reason. She'd seen the photo Damien had posted from the cafe, the four of us smiling, Zoe holding up a goofy peace sign, Kayla with chocolate on her chin. My arm looped around Damien's. Proof that I hadn't just survived. I was thriving. And now she needed a piece of it. I agreed to meet her the next morning. Not at the house. Not where she could play the victim surrounded by familiarity. I chose a neutral cafe downtown. When she arrived, her coat was too thin, her hair pulled back into the same messy bun she wore when she didn't have the energy to try. Thanks for coming, she said quickly, sliding into the booth across from me. I nodded, folding my hands on the table. You said you needed help. I do, she admitted, glancing around as if expecting judgment to come from somewhere behind the espresso machine. It's just a short-term thing. A loan. I'll pay it back. I didn't interrupt. Just watched her squirm. I mean, I've helped you before, she added. When you were going through stuff. My eyebrows raised slightly. You mean when I was recovering from surgery alone while you and your kids took over the house? She flushed. That's not fair. No, I said calmly. It's not. Silence stretched between us. Not angry. Not bitter. Just final. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a check. Not enough to rescue her, but enough to be kind. I'll help you once, I said, sliding it across the table. But never again without respect. She looked down at it. Didn't touch it. I thought we were family, she whispered. I tilted my head. Family doesn't treat a child like a servant. Family doesn't make you beg to be seen. We could be family, but not if I have to keep bleeding for it. For once, she didn't have a comeback. She took the envelope, quietly, nodded once, and I left. Not with anger, not with triumph, with peace, because I had finally said everything I needed to say. And more importantly, I had meant it. I didn't expect Christmas to be peaceful. Honestly, I expected avoidance. A last-minute illness. Maybe even a storm as an excuse to cancel. But Gary called first. "Would you come for Christmas this year?" he asked, voice unusually even. I paused. "I'll come," I said, but on my terms. No drama, he promised. Just bring Kayla. He didn't mention Damien. Or Zoe. Or the last time I'd walked out of their house with Kayla's tiny hand in mine and his words, "She's a girl. She better get used to cleaning," still echoing in my skull. But I agreed. Because I wanted Kayla to see what it looked like to return stronger, not smaller. So we dressed up. Kayla picked her own outfit, a gold tulle skirt, glitter sneakers, and a jacket with angel wings stitched on the back. Zoe did her hair in soft curls, and Damien insisted we take the Porsche. As we pulled into the driveway, I saw Marissa's car already parked. I tightened my grip on Kayla's hand. "Are you ready?" I asked her. She nodded. "I've got my voice, remember?" I smiled. "That's my girl." The door opened before we even knocked. Gary stood there, slightly thinner, older looking somehow, though it had only been a year. His eyes drifted from Kayla to Damien, who stood behind us with a warm nod. And for the first time in forever, Gary didn't look like a wall. He looked like a man trying to figure out how to rebuild something he'd once burned. Inside, the living room hadn't changed much. The same recliner. The same blinking lights. But this time, it wasn't chaos. It was quieter. Still. Unsettled, maybe, but not hostile. Jackson and Eli were already tearing into their gifts, of course, but they actually paused when we walked in. Marissa gave a tight smile from the kitchen. Kayla sat beside the tree, uncertain. And then Gary walked over with a wrapped box. It was larger than I expected. He handed it to her directly. Not tossing. Not waving her off. "Here," he said, awkward but sincere. "This one's for you." Kayla blinked. Opened it slowly. Inside was a beautiful art set, real paints, brushes, sketch pads, a carrying case with her name etched on a tiny gold plate. She gasped, then lifted her eyes to mine. "Was this real?" I nodded, gently. "Go ahead, baby." There was a card, too. She opened it. Read silently. Then looked up at Gary and whispered, "Thank you." He smiled, small, almost embarrassed. Marissa rolled her eyes behind her coffee mug. But no one laughed. No one snorted. No one made her feel invisible. And for once, my heart didn't ache in this house. Later, as we sat around the table, Gary turned to me. "I was wrong," he said quietly, eyes not quite meeting mine. "About a lot of things." I didn't rush to respond. He needed the silence. I thought I was being fair. Thought I was doing what made sense. But I see it now. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Thank you," I said. That was all. We weren't healed. Not yet. But something had shifted. Kayla played with her new art supplies in the corner, while Damien refilled my cider, and Zoe helped decorate cookies with Eli like they were cousins, not strangers. It was subtle, but real. A balancing. A recognition. A beginning. The thing about rising from rock bottom? You start noticing how high you've climbed only when you stop looking down. 3 weeks after Christmas, I was making dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and roasted veggies, when my phone buzzed with a new email. Subject line, "Congratulations, Lena. Welcome to executive training." I blinked. Read it again. Then sank into the kitchen chair, hands trembling. It was official. I'd been selected for the company's executive development program, a 6-month fast track designed to mold future leaders. Only 5 people across the entire regional network were chosen. And I was one of them. I looked over at Kayla, who was humming while coloring at the counter. And I thought about that dusty hospital room 8 years ago. About holding her in my arms while my father turned his back on us, choosing Marissa's family over mine. And now, here we were. Not just surviving. Winning. Damien came home just after I put the pasta on to boil. I barely waited for him to take off his coat. I got it, I said, holding up my phone with a grin I couldn't contain. Executive track. They picked me. He laughed, full and genuine, then swept me into a hug that lifted me off the ground. I told you they'd see it. You're unstoppable. I wasn't used to this. Being celebrated. Not tolerated. Later that night, after Kayla went to bed and Zoe FaceTimed a friend in the other room, Damien and I sat on the balcony with tea and thick blankets. The city lights twinkled like distant applause. "Do you remember," he said softly, "what you looked like the first time I saw you in that boardroom?" I smiled. "Tired? Overdressed?" "No," he said. "You looked like a woman who'd built armor out of her own silence." But I saw something underneath. Like there was a whole fire just waiting to be let out. I sipped my tea, heartful. "And you, did you expect to meet someone like me?" He chuckled. "I didn't expect to meet someone who'd rebuild my faith in people. You didn't just walk through fire, Lena. You carried someone with you." We sat in silence for a while after that. Comfortable. Whole. And that's when I knew. I'd spent years begging people to see my worth. Trying to prove I was enough for a father who measured love and usefulness and a sister who played the victim in every room. But now? Now I was building a life that didn't require permission to exist. And more than that, I was building it with people who knew how to pour in, not just take. A week later, Marissa texted again. "Just wanted you to know, the boys saw your picture on the company website. They think it's cool. Eli asked if you were famous." I smiled. Not because I needed her validation, but because Kayla was sitting beside me, sketching in her new art book, humming again freely. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore, but I'd earned their attention. That's the thing about healing. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet. Steady. Like laughter in a warm kitchen. Like the sound of your daughter sleeping safely in the next room. Like the click of a door that no longer locks from the outside. The invitation came in a red envelope. Handwritten. From my mother. Christmas dinner. Everyone. Just like old times. I stared at the card on my kitchen counter for a long time, the smell of Kayla's hot cocoa swirling through the air as she and Zoe built a gingerbread house at the dining table. "What's that?" Damien asked, drying his hands after rinsing dishes. I held up the envelope. "The olive branch." He raised a brow. "Do you want to go?" I didn't answer right away, because the question wasn't just about one night. It was about who I was now and who I was willing to be when I walked through that door. "I'll go," I said finally. "But this time, it'll be on my terms." We arrived at the house just after 5 p.m. Snow dusted the lawn like powdered sugar, and strings of blinking lights framed the windows. Kayla clutched a carefully wrapped gift in her hands, a watercolor painting she'd made of our little makeshift family. Me, her, Damien, and Zoe sitting under a tree with a banner that read "Home is who you choose." When I asked who it was for, she said, "Grandpa. Just in case he forgot what real love looks like." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Gary answered the door, apron on, oven mitt still hanging from his hand. "Dinner's almost ready," he said awkwardly, stepping aside. "Thanks for coming." We walked in. The living room was full of familiar noise. Marissa was setting the table, trying to keep Jackson from sword-fighting Eli with the butter knives. My mother lit candles and adjusted silverware like world peace depended on it. But when we entered, everything slowed. They looked up. And they saw us, not the version of us they'd grown used to dismissing, but the one that had grown stronger in silence. Kayla walked straight to the tree and gently placed her gift beneath it. Then she turned, hands behind her back, and gave everyone a small, confident nod. Dinner passed in awkward politeness. Small talk. Safe topics. But I could feel it. The shift. No snide remarks. No dismissive glances. Even Marissa kept her tone neutral. Gary served Kayla first. Later, during presents, Marissa's boys tore through wrapping paper like tornadoes. But when it was Kayla's turn, the room actually went quiet. She unwrapped a box with a soft gasp. Inside, a handmade quilt with her name stitched across the center. Butterflies, books, and brushes, each square embroidered with something she loved. There was a card. She opened it and read aloud, "You are seen. You are loved. You always were." From Grandpa. My breath caught. I looked at Gary. He wasn't smiling. Not exactly. But his face was soft. Regretful. Human. Kayla ran over and hugged him tight. And he hugged her back. Not because it was expected. Because he meant it. That moment, that was the shift I'd waited my whole life to see. And it didn't come from screaming. Or begging. It came from boundaries. From walking away until they felt the silence echo. From becoming someone they had to respect, even if they never fully understood me. After dessert, Gary pulled me aside. "I'm not good with words," he began. "But I see it now. How I treated you. How we all did. I don't expect forgiveness overnight. But I'd like the chance to try." I met his eyes. And for the first time in years, I saw a man, not a symbol of everything I'd lost, but someone trying to do better. "I don't need perfect," I said quietly. "I just need real." And he nodded. We hugged. Brief. But genuine. On the way home, Kayla leaned against me in the back seat, drowsy from sugar and excitement. "That was the best Christmas," she murmured. I kissed her forehead. I think it was mine too. 2 years later, I stood in the back row of an elementary school auditorium, heart pounding, trying not to cry before they even called her name. Kindness Award, Kayla Harmon. My daughter stepped onto the stage in a sunflower yellow dress, curls bouncing, cheeks flushed with surprise. The room erupted in applause, teachers, parents, kids. And me. Especially me. She took her certificate from the principal with both hands, then turned toward the audience, searching. Her eyes found me, right where I always promised I'd be. And in that moment, I saw it all. The toddler who once tried to soothe me after another silent holiday. The 6-year-old who clapped for her cousins while holding a postcard with a forced smile. The little girl on her knees, scrubbing a floor she didn't dirty. She wasn't there anymore. In her place stood this radiant, self-possessed child who knew exactly who she was. And it wasn't because of where she came from. It was because of where we'd chosen to go. The ceremony ended with cookies and juice boxes in the gym. I stood beside Damien and Zoe, both beaming with pride, while Kayla introduced us to her friends like we were her own personal VIP section. "That's my mom," she said, proudly. "She helps people who forgot how strong they are." I blinked. "Where'd you hear that?" "You said it once," she shrugged. "Now I say it too." Zoe ruffled her hair. "She's not wrong." Later, Gary and my mother met us at a nearby diner for lunch. They came with gifts, small ones. Gary brought a necklace with a tiny silver K charm. Mom brought a photo album, half finished, filled with new memories, pictures she'd asked permission to take this time. And for once, the food wasn't laced with tension. Just ketchup stains and too many napkins and laughter that didn't feel borrowed. Marissa didn't come. I wasn't surprised. But she had sent a text that morning. "Tell Kayla I'm proud of her. I'm still figuring myself out. But I'm glad she has you." I left it at that. Growth doesn't always come wrapped in ribbon. Sometimes it shows up quietly, clumsily. Late, but still welcome. That night, after everyone had gone home and the dishes were done, Kayla crawled into my lap, too big now but not ready to let go of the ritual. She looked up at me. "Are we still building our own kind of family?" I smiled. Every single day. And it was true. Our family didn't look like the ones in storybooks. It wasn't all smiles and perfect dinners. We had scars. Gaps. Wounds that healed crooked. But we had love. Consistency. Safety. We had choice. That mattered more than blood ever did. Damien brought out a tray of cocoa and Zoe sat down beside Kayla, letting her pick the marshmallows. Our version of normal. A tapestry woven from survival and effort and small, daily tendernesses. We weren't perfect. But we were real. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just holding on, I was flourishing. Kayla yawned, curling up between us. And I whispered, mostly to myself, "We made it." Have you ever realized you didn't just survive the storm, you became the shelter? That's where I am now. And if you're still in the thick of it, still clawing your way toward light, let this story remind you, there is always another side. Thank you for being with me through every beat of this journey. Share the story if it moved you, and remind someone out there that healing isn't just possible. It's waiting.